That was the night a billionaire she had never met crossed a marble floor and told 300 strangers, very quietly, that she was with him. And the rest of her small, careful life, the bakery on the avenue, the borrowed shoes, the sister she was raising on a post-it note budget, would never quite return to its old shape. But to understand why a man like Adrian Wexford Cole came down those long marble stairs for a woman he could not have named that morning, you have to begin where the night began, in the rotunda of the Marbury building, with a tray of canapes balanced on the steady hand of a young woman who had spent 2 years learning how to be invisible. The Sterling Foundation Winter Gala filled the rotunda of the Marbury building like a storm of champagne and quiet money. Marble columns rose around 300 guests in tuxedos and ivory silk, and a string quartet played beneath a chandelier that, the catering manager had whispered, weighed more than the truck Hazel Pratt had ridden in to get there. Hazel was 25, a baker in training, and not a guest. She was a server, hired 6 hours earlier when the planned crew lost 2 girls to the flu. Her uniform was on its second life. White shirt borrowed from her sister Lila, black skirt borrowed from her downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Conroy, shoes from her own closet, but polished with a paper towel and a little olive oil because she had no time. She balanced a tray of salmon canapes with the steadiness of someone who had learned to be invisible for a living. She had a budget for the night that fit on a post-it note. Pay rent, pay Lila's calculus textbook, send $40 home to their mother in Yonkers. Hold the tray steady, smile if a guest looked at her. Not before. At the far end of the rotunda, beside a bronze statue of a horse rearing toward a moon nobody had ordered, a man was drinking slowly. His tuxedo fit like it had been designed for the moment, not the month. His name was Adrian Wexford Cole. He was 32 years old, the chair of a private trust his grandfather had built and his father had nearly given away, and he had not laughed at a Ghana in 3 years. He had stopped trying. Tonight he drank water, watched the room, and kept score of the polite violence. The polite violence began at 9:14. Hazel had moved to the south corner with her tray when she heard her old name called across the marble. "Hazel! Hazel Pratt!" She did not turn. She knew the voice. She had been engaged to it for 14 months. Trent Halloway had broken the engagement by text 2 days before her grandmother's funeral, and she had blocked his number, returned the ring through his sister, and decided that her life would be a quiet thing again. "Hazel!" Trent's voice carried, the way men's voices carry when they have rehearsed in their mirror that morning. "It is you. Come over here a minute." Around him, 3 young women in champagne dresses and a young man with a watch the size of a coaster turned to look. The young woman beside Trent was Marin Sterling, 23, niece of Camille Sterling, the Foundation's matriarch, the bride-to-be Trent had chosen 6 weeks after the breakup. Hazel's tray was heavy. The room was suddenly very quiet in the small radius around her. She turned. She did not smile. "Yes, Trent?" "Marin, friends, this is Hazel," Trent said, with the sweetness of a small blade. "Hazel and I dated through college. Quite a stretch of my life. She is, where exactly are you working now, Hazel? Do tell. Marin's friends would love to hear." He waited. His audience waited. The string quartet kept playing because they had been paid to keep playing through anything. Hazel set her tray on the high cocktail table beside her, gently, the way her grandmother had taught her to set down porcelain. She lifted her chin. She felt the ring of strangers harden around her. "I am working tonight, Trent," she said. "Yes, but as—" Trent began. A man's voice cut him off. Easy, low, with the kind of authority that does not have to raise itself. "She is with me." The room turned in a single ripple. Adrian Wexford Cole had come down from the gallery without anyone noticing, the way men come down from places when they have been quiet for years. He stopped a polite 3 feet from Hazel and held out his hand to her, palm up, as if he had been about to escort her to dinner all along. "Adrian," Maren Sterling breathed. "I did not know you were coming." "I am here," Adrian said. His eyes did not leave Hazel's. "Hazel, I lost track of you. The exhibit room, was it?" Hazel's heart was a drum behind her ribs. She had never seen him before in her life. She placed her hand in his, because she was not going to let her hand shake in public, and because Trent Holloway's mouth had fallen open in a way she would remember for years. "Yes," she said. "The exhibit room. I am sorry, Adrian. I was caught up." "Don't be sorry," Adrian said. He kept his voice gentle, almost amused. "Trent, was it? Forgive us. We have a quiet table waiting." He drew her hand through his arm with the unhurried courtesy of a man who has done it 1,000 times for women he knew, and walked her, slowly, past the bronze horse, past the string quartet, past Camille Sterling, who had risen from her chair, past the kitchen entrance, into a small alcove between two velvet curtains where the noise of the rotunda dropped to a hum. Hazel realized she could not feel her feet. He saw it. He pulled out a small velvet bench from the wall and sat her on it, then stood at a polite distance with his back to the curtain so no one could see her face. "Breathe," he said. "Slowly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. I will count. 4, 3, 2, 1. She breathed. She breathed again. She breathed a third time. Her hands had been shaking. They stopped. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was small. I do not know you." "No," he said. "You do not." She looked up at him then. He had a careful face, dark eyes that seemed to be reading more than the moment, hair the color of strong tea, a small scar at the corner of his jaw, and a mouth that did not yet know how to relax at parties. He was not handsome the way Trent was handsome. He was handsome the way a quiet room is handsome. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because you were going to be made very small in front of 300 people, he said. And I had nothing better to do tonight than refuse to let that happen." Hazel looked at her own hands in her lap. They were a baker's hands. Short nails, a small burn from a hot rack, a scar at the base of her thumb from a rolling pin she had pushed too hard when she was tired. She had been tired for 2 years. "I should go," she said. "If I leave now, I can finish my shift." "You cannot finish your shift," Adrian said gently. "I just told 300 people you are my date. If you walk back out and start serving canapés, the photographs will be worse for both of us. Especially for you." "I need this shift," she said. "I get paid tonight. I have rent on Tuesday." "How much is the shift?" $240, she said, meeting his eyes, refusing to be embarrassed. "Plus tips." He took out his wallet, which was thinner than she expected, and set 5 crisp hundreds on the bench beside her without a flourish. "That is your shift, and your sister's textbook. I'm told her textbook is $68. Algebra?" "Calculus," Hazel said, and laughed, because it came out of her before she could stop it. "How did you—" "I overheard your colleague on the stairs say her sister Lila needed a calculus book. I assumed you were Lila's sister. Was I wrong?" "Her name is Lila," Hazel admitted. She looked at the bills, and then at him. "I cannot take this." "You can. It is not pity. It is the price of you finishing 1 quiet hour with me at a table in the gallery, while Camille Sterling decides what she thinks happened. Then you go home and never see me again if you choose." "And if I do not choose that?" "Then we figure out the rest tomorrow." She considered him. Outside the curtain, the gala continued. A soprano was about to sing. Trent Holloway was probably already telling Maren Sterling some new version of the story. Camille Sterling was probably already on the phone with someone. 1 quiet hour, Hazel said. "And I will keep these only because I have a sister, not because I have pride." I respect both, Adrian said. Come, we will use the back stair. I do not like the room out there either. He offered his arm again. She took it. The velvet bench stayed warm behind them, and the marble floor of the back stair was cool, and on the upper gallery, a small round table waited beneath a window that looked over the dark park. He pulled out her chair. He sat across from her. A waiter, with a face like a closed door, brought them 2 glasses of water. No questions. Tell me something, Adrian said, when the waiter had gone. What were you doing before tonight? Working at a bakery in Astoria, Hazel said. Pratt and Daughter, it is called. Except it is not mine yet. I am the apprentice. 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, 4 days a week. The owner is teaching me brioche. I do catering nights for the rent. Pratt and Daughter, he repeated. The daughter being you, eventually. That was the dream of my grandmother, she said. She left me her starter when she passed. I keep it in a jar on my windowsill. I named it Penelope. She'd not meant to tell him about Penelope. He laughed softly. It was such a quiet sound she almost did not catch it. And what does your grandmother think of Trent Holloway? My grandmother left us 18 months ago, Hazel said. She would have called him a small man with a large mirror. And then she would have made me a coffee. Adrian was silent for a moment. Then, very simply, he said, I am sorry. For what? For asking. You did not know. I did not. But sometimes questions are the kind apology one cannot rehearse. Hazel found, suddenly, that her hour was already sliding away from her. The window over the park was full of the city's amber lights. The soprano below them was singing a Puccini aria about a girl who freezes in the snow waiting for love, which Hazel had always thought was a stupid plot, but the voice was lovely. And what do you do, Adrian Wexford Cole? She asked. I run a private trust my grandfather built, and my father did not quite ruin, he said. We give money to community programs in the boroughs. We make poor decisions about our public image. We are bad at parties. You seem fine at parties, she said. I have not enjoyed one in a long time, he said. He looked at her over the rim of his water glass. Tonight I caught myself enjoying one. I wanted to know why before I came down those stairs. Now I know. She did not answer that. The aria below ended. A polite, distant applause rose. Hazel finished her water. I should go, she said. My sister is waiting up. She worries. I will have my driver take you home. Adrian, it is 1 in the morning in the eyes of any taxi rate card, and I would rather not picture you on the subway in heels you borrowed from a neighbor. She blushed. She did not know how he had noticed the heels. He helped her up. He walked her to a side door. A long black car waited at the curb. The driver was an older man named Joseph, who tipped his cap and called her Miss Pratt, without asking how he was supposed to know her name. Thank you, Hazel said, on the curb. For tonight. Adrian took something from inside his jacket, a small white card. His name, a number written in pen. Tomorrow you will see things online about yourself, he said. Some of them will be unkind. Call me before you do anything because of them. I do not have your number stored. You do now. She got into the car. The door shut with the soft sound of a vault. The car pulled away from the marble curb. Adrian stood with his hands in his pockets and watched it go. Joseph drove the way men drive who have been trusted with other men's quiet for 30 years. He took the long route along the river, past the bridges lit gold against the black water, and he did not turn on the radio. He glanced at Hazel once in the mirror, when she pulled her grandmother's old hat from her bag and set it on her knee, and he allowed himself a small, professional smile, because he had been driving Adrian Wexford Cole for 9 years, and he had not, in those 9 years, taken a stranger home from a gala. Hazel watched the river. She held the small white card with Adrian's number on it between her thumb and her forefinger. She did not put it in her bag. She did not put it in her coat. She held it the entire way to Astoria, as if she were afraid that, if she set it down, she would later have to wonder whether it had been real. Hazel got home to her one-bedroom in Astoria at midnight. Lila was on the couch with a calculus textbook open across her chest, asleep. Hazel covered her with the quilt from the bed and went into the kitchen to check on Penelope. The starter on the windowsill had risen perfectly, doubling itself in the little mason jar. She fed it a teaspoon of flour and a teaspoon of water and stirred with the wooden chopstick her grandmother had once used to stir tea. She did not sleep well. At 6 the next morning, her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and she opened her eyes to 43 notifications. The society blog Manhattan After Dark had her photograph at the top of the page. She and Adrian, in the alcove, his back partially turned, her hand on his arm, her face tipped up. The caption ran, "Who is the Wexford Cole mystery girl?" The comments under the photograph were the cruelty she expected. "Looks cheap. He could do better. Probably a coat check girl. Probably worse." She closed the phone. She made coffee. She fed Lila scrambled eggs and pretended she had slept fine. Lila looked at her once, the way younger sisters look at older ones when they know not to ask, and went to school. At 7:30, the bakery owner called. Mr. Pratt, no relation, everyone joked about it, was a kind man, with a grey beard, 60 years old, and a soft heart. Today, his voice was strange. "Hazel," he said, "I have to ask you something, and I do not enjoy asking. Did you become someone's, Was there a change in your situation last night?" "I was at a gala on a catering shift," Hazel said. "Mr. Pratt, what is going on?" "A man called me," Mr. Pratt said. "Said he was your former... Trent. Said you had been seen with a wealthy gentleman and that, he might be embarrassed if He said for the bakery's reputation I should consider, Hazel sat down at her kitchen table. The chair was older than she was. The vinyl was patched with electrical tape. "You are letting me go," she said. "I am sorry, Hazel," Mr. Pratt said, and she heard the real misery in him. "I have a building I am trying to sell. The neighborhood is loose with rumor. I cannot. I'm sorry." "It is all right, Mr. Pratt," Hazel said. "Thank you for the 8 months. Will you give me a reference if anyone asks?" "Yes," he said. "I will. Hazel." "Yes." "You are not what he said." "I know," she said, gently, because he sounded like a man who needed her to forgive him, and she did not have the energy to be cruel about it. "Take care of your knee. It is still your knee." She hung up. She did not cry. She went to the windowsill and looked at Penelope and breathed the 4, 3, 2, 1 Adrian had counted in the alcove. She went to her closet and took out the folder where she kept her resume and her grandmother's recipe book. The doorbell rang at 11. Joseph, the driver, stood at her step in a dark coat. He held a thick cream envelope and a small cardboard box. "Miss Pratt," he said. "Mr. Wexford Cole asked me to deliver these. He instructs me to say that he understands if you say no, and that you should take all the time you wish to decide." The envelope held a typed letter and a check. The letter offered her a 6-month consulting contract with the Wexford Charitable Trust at a salary that made her sit on the floor of her hallway. The role? Design and lead a new community cafe space in their downtown community center. Currently dark, currently funded, but unfilled. The check was a small advance against the first month, cashable at her bank with a single endorsement. The cardboard box held 2 things: a new bag of King Arthur flour, a small jar of honey from a beekeeper in Brooklyn, with a handwritten note in tight, careful handwriting. For Penelope. A. She closed the door very gently after Joseph went down the steps. She sat on the floor of her own hallway with the envelope in her lap and laughed, once, at the ceiling, because the man had remembered her starter's name. She did not cash the check. She walked to the post office and mailed the envelope back with a note of her own. Thank you. I cannot accept charity. H. The honey she kept. She fed Penelope the smallest spoonful that night, and the loaves she baked at home the next morning rose higher than they had ever risen for her. At 5:30, Adrian Wexford Cole rang her doorbell himself. He was wearing a charcoal coat over the kind of sweater men only own when their mothers buy it for them. His hair was wet from the early rain. He looked at her in the doorway in her flour-dusted apron and said, very simply, "I should not have sent it the way I did. Forgive me. May I come in for 10 minutes? Adrian, she said. Lila, who had come home 20 minutes earlier, peered around the doorframe with her phone halfway to her face. Oh my God, Lila said, very quietly. Lila, Hazel said. Hi, Lila said. Hi. Hello. I am Lila. I am leaving. Bye. She vanished into the bedroom and closed the door with a click that was, somehow, louder than a slan. Hazel stood aside. Adrian stepped in. He did not look around her apartment with the eye of a tourist. He looked at the windowsill, where Penelope sat in her jar, and he nodded at her, as if to a small dog he had been told about. Tea, Hazel said. I have nothing else. Tea is exactly right. She made tea. He took off his wet coat and folded it over the back of her one good chair. He stood at the window. The sound of children outside, kicking a ball against a stoop, came up through the glass. Hazel, he said, when she handed him the cup. I am here for 2 reasons. The first is to ask whether your bakery still has you on the schedule for tomorrow. It does not. It let me go this morning. He closed his eyes for a count of 1. He opened them. I am sorry. I will not say what I would do to him because I am trying to be a man you do not regret meeting. Thank you for not saying it. The second reason is that I would like to take you to dinner tomorrow night, not as a follow-up to last night, as a man asking a woman who fed his loneliness for an hour to spend another hour with him. If you say no, I will go away and you will keep the honey. She looked at him over the rim of her own cup. The kitchen smelled of yeast and rain. The radiator clicked. Lila in the bedroom was, audibly, listening. Adrian, Hazel said, I do not date men who solve me. I am not trying to solve you. I am trying to be near you for 1 more hour. She thought about it. She thought about her mother in Yonkers, about her grandmother's recipe book on her counter, about Trent Holloway, and the long, heavy years she had spent shrinking herself to fit beside him. 1 dinner, she said. Somewhere small. I pick the place. Anywhere you want. Matteo's in Astoria. It is 2 blocks from here. He is an old chef. I babysit his granddaughters sometimes. He will glare at you. Then he is exactly the sort of man I want to be glared at by. He drank his tea. He left after exactly 10 minutes. After he left, Hazel stood for a long minute in the doorway, looking at the small, wet shape his coat had pressed into the back of her one good chair. The kettle was still warm. The window over the radiator had fogged where his breath had touched it. Lila came out of the bedroom barefoot, holding her textbook against her chest like a shield, and sat down at the kitchen table without saying anything. Hazel poured her a cup of tea. They drank it together without talking. The apartment, after he had stood in it, felt different in a way Hazel could not name. Not bigger, not smaller. Only honest. The radiator clicked twice. The children outside had gone home. Penelope rose another inch in her jar, slowly, the way good things rise when nobody is watching them. Matteo's was an Italian restaurant the size of a New York studio apartment. 8 tables, red checked cloths, a pizza oven Matteo had built himself out of stones from his cousin's farm in Calabria. Matteo himself was 68, square as a fence post, and he met Adrian at the door with the look of a grandfather inspecting a young man's neck for tattoos. "You are the one in the photograph," Matteo said, "on Mrs. Sandoval's phone, from the gala." "I am, yes," Adrian said. "You are punctual. Good. You will eat what I bring. I will not hand you a menu. Sit." He sat. Hazel sat across from him. Matteo brought bread, olive oil, a small white plate of olives, and a stare that lasted a full 10 seconds. "He is lonely," Matteo said to Hazel after the second course of pasta. He said it as if Adrian were not at the table. "But he is a clean lonely, not a pig lonely. I will allow it. Eat the gnocchi. The gnocchi is a mood." Adrian laughed. It was a real laugh, low and surprised. The way a man laughs when he has just remembered laughing is something a body does. Hazel noticed his shoulders settling into the back of the chair. They talked. He told her his mother had been gone since he was 9, and his father had not, in any meaningful sense, spoken at the dinner table since. She told him her father had left when she was 12, and her mother had refused to let it harden her. He told her he had a younger sister who lived in London, and a brother-in-law he liked. She told him Lila wanted to be a veterinarian, and was secretly afraid she was not smart enough for it. He told her Lila was, very obviously from the way she wrote a calculus problem on the whiteboard he had glimpsed in the bedroom, smart enough. The check came. He reached for it. She put her hand over his. "I asked you here," she said. "I pay." "Hazel." "It is a small bill at a small place. I have just been given a salary, by a man who, I learn now, did not retract his offer when I sent it back. Matteo, my friend, does this man's check still apply for tomorrow if I show up at his office?" "Yes," Adrian said. "It still applies." "Then I will pay for tonight, and tomorrow morning I will accept his job under 3 rules. I will hear them now, please, Adrian." He listened. "1, she said. "I am not your date at any event of any kind for the duration of the contract. We solved last night with a calm, dull paragraph from your press office. We do not give them new pictures." "Agreed." 2, I am paid for the work I do, not for the favor of last night. If the work is bad, you fire me." "Agreed." 3, you do not solve my sister's life. You do not pay her tuition. You do not buy her a textbook. You do not move her into a building of yours. She is mine to raise. She is the only thing I am proud of, and I'm going to finish raising her with my own hands." He looked at her across the small, red-checked table. Matteo, behind the counter, was openly wiping a glass with a towel and watching. "Agreed," Adrian said. "On a 4th condition of my own. You let me bring you bread when I have it. The bakery on East 68th that I like makes a loaf only on Thursdays. I want to bring you one Thursday." "That is not a condition," Hazel said. "That is asking for a date in a different shape." "I know," he said. "I am not above asking for a date in a different shape." "Bring the loaf," she said. "We will see." They walked back through Astoria together in a light snow that was not really snow, only the city's breath turning visible. He did not offer her his arm, and she did not take it. He walked her to her stoop. He did not come inside. He shook her hand once, formally, like a man at the end of a job interview, and got into a black car that had been waiting at the corner for an hour. Hazel watched the car turn at the avenue. She climbed the 4 flights to her apartment slowly, because her shoes hurt, and because she wanted to think. The hallway smelled of someone's onion soup and someone else's laundry. The buzzer downstairs had been broken since the spring. Lila was awake. Lila had already eaten the half-bagel Hazel had left for her. Lila wanted, very badly, to know whether Adrian had ordered the gnocchi, and whether he had laughed at any of Matteo's jokes, and whether he had complimented the wallpaper. which was old and a little floral, and which Lila considered the apartment's only crime. The Wexford Charitable Trust occupied 2 floors of a glass tower south of Bryant Park. On Monday morning, Hazel arrived at 8:45 in a navy blazer she had owned for 4 years, and a pair of low heels she had bought new. The receptionist, Penny, a woman in her late 50s with a silver braid down her back, took one look at her and said, gently, "Miss Pratt, he has been pacing." "He has?" "3 times around the kitchenette, quietly. He does not pace loudly." Penny showed her to a small office Adrian had cleared out near a window. On the desk was a single white envelope, a glass of water with a slice of cucumber, and a paper bag from the East 68th bakery. Inside the bag, 1 loaf of dark rye with caraway. A note. "Thursday is in 2 days. I could not wait." She laughed into her hand. Penny pretended not to see. Her first week was hard. The senior board members, 8 men and 3 women, mostly in their 60s, mostly cousins by marriage of someone, assumed 3 things about her. First, that she was Adrian's mistress. Second, that she had been hired to soften his public image. Third, that she would be gone in 8 weeks. She did not contradict any of them. She read the binder Penny gave her, a 5-year history of the community centre on Sterling Street, currently a dark space with new floors, and a budget that had been earmarked, frozen, and re-earmarked 4 times. She drafted, by Friday, a 1-page brief proposing a community cafe on the ground floor, free breakfasts on weekday mornings for school children in the local public school, paid lunches at cost, a small evening menu by reservation only for the Foundation's senior fellows, and 1 private back room for elderly visitors who needed quiet. Mr. Pratt's bakery, the same one that had let her go, could supply a daily bread order at a small markup that would help him keep his lease, if he was willing to swallow the irony. Adrian read it twice. He signed it. He passed it to the board on Monday, with no comment. On Tuesday, Camille Sterling called Hazel directly and invited her to lunch. The lunch took place in a private dining room at a club Hazel did not name to anyone, even Lila. Camille was 71, ash blonde, with the bones of a woman who had been beautiful for so long she had stopped noticing it. She wore a dove-grey suit and a string of pearls Hazel could not have paid for with 5 years of her current salary. "Miss Pratt," Camille said, "I will not waste either of our hours. Tell me 3 things about yourself I cannot read in any file." Hazel set down her water glass. "My grandmother was a cleaner at a chapel in Yonkers, and she taught me 4 hymns I sing when I cannot sleep," Hazel said. "I am paying for my sister's first year of college, and I am not sleeping much. And I have never met your godson before 2 weeks ago. Whatever last Saturday looked like at the gala, it was not what it looked like." Camille studied her. She said nothing for so long that the waiter brought the wrong soup and took it away again. "You did not blink," Camille said, finally. "I am a woman who measures people by whether they blink at me." "I have been blinked at," Hazel said. "By experts. I learned not to." Camille laughed. It was a startling sound, dry and almost girlish. She picked up her bread roll. She tore it in half. She ate it slowly. Then she said, "Society will not forgive you, you understand. You are a stranger," he claimed, in front of 300 people. "You will be in a column under a different name every week for 6 months. You will be photographed at the dry cleaner. There will be a young woman with a phone outside your apartment building tomorrow morning. None of that will go away because you sent his money back." "I know." "And what will you do?" "My job," Hazel said. "And my hymns." Camille set down the second half of her bread roll. "Adrian," she said, "is a boy I have watched since he was 4. He went into a glass tower the year his sister married. He has not come down. If you climb in there, I expect you to bring him out the other side. If you cannot, I expect you to leave him before you make him worse." "Yes, ma'am." "And eat your soup. It is mushroom. It is not a test." On the train back to the office, Hazel watched the city slide past the window and tried, with the limited patience she had for herself that month, to feel less small. Camille Sterling had told her 2 true things and 1 warning. The 2 true things were that Adrian had been quiet for 15 years, and that society would punish her for being a stranger he had claimed in public. The warning was the implicit one between the 2. Hazel was already in the tower. She did not yet know whether she was the climbing kind. She thought of her grandmother in her cleaning uniform, walking through the chapel doors at 4 in the morning with a thermos of coffee and a small black radio that played hymns at low volume so as not to wake the priest in the rectory next door. Her grandmother had been the climbing kind. Her grandmother had also been very, very tired. Hazel pressed her forehead to the cool train window and counted, very softly to herself, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first weeks at the Trust settled into a quiet rhythm. Hazel worked on the cafe layout, the breakfast program, the supply contracts. Adrian came by her office once a day, never for more than 5 minutes, always with a question that turned out, very transparently, to be an excuse. On Tuesday, he asked whether the back room should have bookshelves. On Wednesday, he asked whether the chairs should have arms. On Thursday, he asked if she had eaten lunch, and brought her, when she said no, a paper sack containing a sandwich, an apple, and a single small flower wrapped in damp paper that he had clearly bought himself, badly, on the corner. Small acts. A storm came in on a Friday afternoon, and Hazel had not brought an umbrella. When she went to leave at 6, an umbrella stood in a stand by her office door. Black, plain, no monogram. The kind a man buys from a hardware store, not the kind a man buys from a shop with a name. It had a small tag tied to the handle. Borrowed from me. Return when convenient. A. She started to bring him real food. Penny had told her, in a moment of conspiracy, that Adrian ate only the salads his assistant ordered, and never the bread that came with them. So Hazel began to leave a small wax paper package on his desk, twice a week, while he was in meetings. Brioche on Mondays. A wedge of cheese, an apple, a small cut of olive bread on Wednesdays. She did not write notes. He did not ask. The first Wednesday, Penny found her at the elevator and squeezed her arm without saying anything at all. The tabloid hit on a Wednesday. Manhattan After Dark ran a follow-up. Billionaire's Astoria waitress. A source speaks. The source was Trent Holloway. He told the magazine, anonymously, that Hazel had cheated on him with a married man during their engagement and had a long history of using men with money. The married man was a fiction Trent had invented for the article. The long history was Trent. Hazel saw the article on her phone at 6 in the morning. She closed the phone and went to the window. Penelope was full of bubbles. Lila was already up at the kitchen table with her textbook. Outside, in the grey rain, a young woman with a phone stood at the foot of the brownstone steps. She got dressed. She kissed Lila on the head. She walked past the photographer without acknowledging her. She took the subway to the office. She expected Adrian to call her into his office at 9. He did not call her at 9. At 10, Penny stopped at her door and said, very softly, "He saw it. He has not spoken since 7. He is in his office." At 11, Hazel went to him. She knocked. He looked up from his desk, and his face was the face of a man who had been hit hard and had not yet decided whether to fall. "Hazel," he said. "Adrian," she said. "I have written a draft response for your press office. Do not. It is short, 3 sentences. It does not name him. It corrects the timeline of our acquaintance. It does not deny the photograph. Please read it." "Hazel, sit down." She did not sit. He stood up. He came around the desk and stopped a foot away from her, his hands at his sides, the way men stand when they have not yet decided what their hands are for. "I am," he said. "I am thinking. I see that. I do not want to make this worse for you. If I issue a statement, they will write a follow-up. If I say nothing, they will move on in 2 weeks. They will not move on. They will write that I am trying to be quiet. Hazel. Adrian, I'm asking you to defend me. Not loudly, quietly, with your name. He has used my name like a doormat for 18 months. Today he used yours. I'm not asking you to humiliate him. I'm asking you to say one true sentence. That he was wrong." He did not answer her at once. He looked at the window. He looked at his hands. He looked at her, finally, and what she saw in him was not cowardice. It was something much harder. It was a man who had been quiet for so long that opening his mouth had become a foreign motion. "Give me a day," he said. "Hazel, 1 day." "All right," she said. She went back to her office. She wrote a 1-page resignation letter. She did not deliver it. She put it in her desk drawer. For a day she watched her phone like an animal she did not trust. She watched the news cycle do what news cycles do. Pick up the tabloid line, repeat it once, repeat it again with a slightly worse photograph, repeat it a third time with quotes from people who did not know either of them. Strangers wrote things about her under their real names and felt brave for it. The young woman with the camera returned to the foot of her brownstone steps and was joined by a second one, who at least had the decency to bring her own coffee. Penny stopped by her office twice, once with tea, once with a small flowering plant Penny said had come from her own kitchen window because it had been crowding her oregano. Hazel watered the plant. She did not look at the news. She did not look at her phone. She watched the line of light under Adrian's office door, 3 offices down the hall, and waited for it to turn off. That night he did not call. He did not text. The next morning the article had been picked up by 2 larger outlets. Lila came home from school with her face white and said, "A boy at school asked if my sister was a..." and could not finish the sentence. Hazel held her sister on the couch for an hour. She did not call Adrian. On the 3rd morning, Adrian had still not spoken. The community cafe signage was being installed on Sterling Street that afternoon. Hazel came in at 8, sat at her desk, took the resignation letter out of the drawer, walked to Adrian's office, set the letter on his desk while he was on a phone call he did not interrupt, and walked out of the building. She walked 12 blocks in the rain before she allowed herself to cry. She did not cry the way women cry in films, with their hands over their faces and their shoulders heaving. She cried the way a baker cries, standing on the corner of 6th and 23rd, water running down her cheeks under the wide brim of her grandmother's old hat, looking up at a glass building she did not recognize. She cried for 1 minute exactly, because she had a sister at home and a starter on a windowsill, and a habit of giving herself 1 minute of weakness, and no more. Then she wiped her face on the sleeve of her coat. Then she walked the 4 remaining blocks to the subway. On the platform, she bought a coffee from a man whose cart she had stopped at every Tuesday morning for the past 3 weeks, and he handed it to her without charging her. And that small, unasked kindness was what almost finished her. She sat on the train, holding the paper cup in both hands all the way to Astoria. She did not check her phone. She watched the names of the stations come and go above the doors, and tried, with everything she had, to be the woman her grandmother had raised her to be. The press conference for the community cafe was at 4 o'clock the next day. Hazel was not invited. She did not need to be invited. She had built it. She put on the navy blazer. She rode the train to Sterling Street. She stood at the back of the small crowd, behind the 2 cameras and the local councilwoman. Adrian stood at the lectern. He looked, for once in his life, like a man who had not slept. Beside him stood his father, Charles Wexford Cole, 68, grey, frail, dressed in a coat too heavy for the weather. Charles had not spoken in public in 5 years. He was there because Adrian had asked him to be there. Adrian began his short speech. He thanked the council. He thanked the contractors. He thanked Penny, who blushed. He did not say Hazel's name. In the second minute of his speech, Charles Wexford Cole's hand went to his chest. Hazel saw it before the cameras did. The old man's face went pale. His lips loosened. His right hand opened and closed once, and he sagged half a step into Adrian's shoulder. The cameras swung. The councilwoman froze. Adrian turned, caught his father, and did not seem to know what to do with him. Hazel pushed through the crowd. "Sit him down," she said quietly when she reached them. "On the curb, not on the lectern. Adrian, his coat is too hot. Off." Adrian, in shock, obeyed her. They lowered Charles to the curb. Hazel knelt in front of him. "Mr. Wexford Cole," she said. "Hello. My name is Hazel Pratt. I am a friend of your son. You are having a panic attack, which is not a heart event, although your body is, very rudely, lying to you about that right now. We are going to breathe together. In through your nose, 4 counts. Out through your mouth, 4 counts. She breathed for him. Adrian, on the other side of his father, breathed too. The cameras kept rolling. Someone, mercifully, called for medical help. Charles Wexford Cole looked up at Hazel with the watery eyes of a man who had been frightened in public for the first time in 20 years and said, "I am sorry." "You do not apologize for a body, sir," Hazel said. "You apologize for what a body lets you say later." The medics arrived. They confirmed it was a panic attack and nothing more. Charles refused to be taken in. Adrian helped him into a town car. Hazel turned to the cameras and the journalists, who were still rolling. "This press conference is over," she said clearly. "This is not a story. A man's body did a frightening thing and his son took care of him. If anyone publishes the footage, I will, very personally, ask them not to. I expect to be heard. Thank you." She walked into the new cafe. The lights were not yet on. She stood at the counter she had ordered from a carpenter in Long Island City and put her hands flat on the wood and breathed. The footage went viral in 20 minutes anyway. The major outlets carried it as the woman who handled it. By 6 o'clock, Manhattan After Dark had a follow-up of its own. Were we wrong? The clip was 4 minutes long. It showed an elderly man on a curb being talked back into his own breath by a woman in a navy blazer. It showed her hand cupped at his temple, the small blue square of cloth she had taken from her own coat pocket and pressed to his neck because the curb was cold. It showed her, at the end, lifting her chin and asking the cameras to leave a man's dignity alone. The clip showed Adrian Wexford Cole on the other side of his father, watching her with a face nobody who knew him had seen in 15 years. By 7 o'clock, 12,000 strangers had written under the clip a version of the same comment. Who is she? By 8 o'clock, Mr. Pratt of Pratt and Daughter Bakery had been called by 3 different reporters who wanted to know whether his apprentice was available for an interview. He told all 3 of them, with the gentle gruffness of a man who had been a baker for 40 years and had never lost a fight with a journalist, that his apprentice was busy, that his apprentice was always busy, and that they could pick up a loaf of dark rye on Thursday like everyone else. At 7, Adrian came into the cafe through the back. He did not look at her. He walked to the counter. He put both hands on the wood, mirroring hers. "I should have spoken when the tabloid wrote that," he said. "I am sorry." "I know. I told myself I was thinking. I was hiding. I've been hiding since I was 9. You told me to say 1 true sentence. I owed you 20. How is your father?" "Drinking tea. He likes you. He told me, on the way home, that he had not allowed himself to be afraid in front of his son in 25 years. He thanked me for letting him." Hazel looked up at him. The rain was on the windows. The new lights flickered on, one by one, as the carpenter's man at the breaker box found the right switches. "Adrian," she said, "I walked out because I did not want to be a secret kept warm in a glass tower. If you cannot say my name in public, I cannot stay in your tower. I will say your name in public, he said. Tomorrow. To the board, to my godmother, to anyone who will listen. I should have done it the morning of the gala. Tomorrow is a long word. Will you come tomorrow? Yes. The Wexford Charitable Trust held its quarterly board meeting at 10 the next morning, in a conference room with a long teak table and a view of the harbour. 11 board members sat around the table. Camille Sterling sat at the far end. Adrian sat at the head. Hazel, at his quiet request, sat beside him. He did not give a long speech. He had practiced something long the night before. In the morning, in the elevator on the way up, he had told her, "I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to say what comes." He stood. He buttoned his jacket once. He looked at his godmother. "I will be brief," Adrian said. 3 weeks ago, at the Sterling Gala, a woman I had never spoken to was about to be mocked in front of a room I help host every year. I went down the stairs without a plan. I told the room she was with me. I have not regretted a sentence less in my life. The room was very still. Camille Sterling, at the far end of the table, did not blink. "In the weeks since," Adrian said, "she has built our community cafe. She has handled my father in public when his body betrayed him. She has corrected me. She has not asked me for anything I had not already failed to give her. She walked out of this organization 3 days ago because I was too afraid to say her name during a tabloid week. That fear was mine, not hers." He paused. He looked once at Hazel. She did not speak. "I'm telling you, the board, the following," Adrian said. "Hazel Pratt is with me, not by my arrangement, by her choice, when she chooses it. I do not yet know if she chooses it. I would like to ask her, in front of you who matter to me, whether she will allow me to court her properly, slowly, openly, with the sound of my name and hers in the same sentence in any room." He turned. Hazel was not blushing. She was looking at him with the absolutely level face her grandmother had taught her to put on when a man asked her something important. "Adrian Wexford Cole," she said. "You can take me to dinner." The board, which contained 2 retired federal judges, a former ambassador and Camille Sterling, did not know what was supposed to happen next. Camille, finally, put down her pen. "Adrian," Camille said, "you will close this meeting. You will go to lunch with her. You will not return to this office today. You will return tomorrow at 9. We will continue the agenda then." She gathered her papers. She paused at the door. "Miss Pratt, the bread on the back table at last week's meeting was the best bread I have eaten in this room in 40 years. I assume that was you." "Mr. Pratt, of Pratt & Daughter Bakery in Astoria," Hazel said. "He is having a difficult year. He bakes us our daily order now." "Excellent decision," Camille said. "Carry on." She left. The room emptied. Hazel and Adrian sat at the long teak table by themselves, looking at each other in a quiet that was not awkward, only new. "Lunch," Adrian said. "Lunch," Hazel said. "Mateo's. He will glare at you again. He will be pleased." 6 months later, the Wexford Community Cafe on Sterling Street served free breakfast to the children of PS 113 from 7:30 to 8:45 every weekday morning. The room had 10 round tables of pale ash, 12 framed photographs of children's hand-drawn loaves of bread donated by the school's 3rd grade classes, a brass bell at the counter that only rang when an order was for a regular customer, and a window with a deep ledge where Penelope's daughter, a smaller starter Hazel had decanted in March, sat in a glass jar with a small card under it that read, in Lila's handwriting, "Do not feed me. I am working." Adrian came in most mornings at 7:20 for coffee and a slice of dark rye with butter. He sat at the counter with a book he never read and watched Hazel work the register and the small kitchen pass-through with the eye of a man who had decided, finally, that the most beautiful thing in his city was a baker remembering an order without writing it down. The third graders called him Mr. Adrian. He answered to it without protest. The fourth graders, who were tougher, called him Mr. Bread because he handed out the rounded heels of loaves to anyone who lingered too long at the counter. And he answered to that too. Pratt and Daughter Bakery in Astoria expanded into the empty storefront next door. Mr. Pratt, with no children of his own, signed papers transferring half the business to Hazel. Lila Pratt, freshman pre-vet, made the dean's list. Their mother in Yonkers, after some persuasion, retired from the cleaning route she had walked for 30 years and moved into the second bedroom of a small apartment Hazel had taken on a higher floor of the same Astoria building. Penelope, the starter, got a glass jar twice the size of the original. Hazel still fed her with the wooden chopstick. Adrian and Hazel were married on a Tuesday morning in a small chapel in Yonkers Hazel's grandmother had once cleaned. Lila was Hazel's witness. Charles Wexford Cole was Adrian's. There were 9 guests. The bread was Mr. Pratt's. The vows were short. The rings were simple. There was no photographer. The chapel had a stained glass window of 3 women carrying loaves of bread to a hillside, which Hazel's grandmother had pointed at every Sunday of Hazel's childhood and called the only honest stained glass in the county. Hazel wore a long ivory dress Lila had picked from a small shop in Astoria, and her grandmother's pearl studs in her ears, and a single white rose at her wrist that Mateo had cut from the planter on his stoop that morning and brought up the avenue in a coffee cup. Adrian wore a charcoal suit with no tie. He had spent a week practicing the words and, when the moment came, he said them all at once, very quietly, and forgot the comma he had put between 2 of the sentences. Hazel laughed at him for that, gently, in front of the priest. Charles Wexford Cole, sitting in the front row, wept the way old men weep, with no shame and no warning. Lila Pratt cried more loudly than anyone, including her mother, and apologized for it for the rest of the day. The Sterling Foundation Winter Gala came around again in December. Hazel went, this time, on Adrian's arm. She wore a midnight blue dress Lila had picked out with her. Camille Sterling met them at the door and kissed Hazel on both cheeks. In the second hour of the gala, Hazel saw a young woman in a borrowed dress at the south corner of the rotunda. The young woman was holding a tray. Beside her, an older man, in a watch the size of a coaster, was raising his voice. "Excuse me, dear, where exactly do you work normally?" And the room around them was shifting into the same hard ring Hazel remembered from a year ago. Hazel set her glass down on the high cocktail table beside her. Adrian, who had been speaking to a senator's wife, turned. He saw what she saw. He did not move. "Stay," Hazel said quietly. "I will go." She crossed the marble floor. The young woman in the borrowed dress had her chin up and her eyes wide. The older man was an investor Hazel had met once in a board meeting. Hazel stopped beside the young woman. She placed her hand at the young woman's elbow, gently, the way Adrian had once placed his at hers. "She's with me," Hazel said. The room turned. The investor stammered. The young woman, who had not yet realized what was happening, looked sideways at Hazel and then up at the gallery, where Adrian Wexford Cole, her husband, the chair of the Wexford Charitable Trust, was watching her with the small, quiet smile of a man who had not laughed at a gala in 3 years and had, since one night in a marble alcove, learned how. Hazel guided the young woman away from the bronze horse. The string quartet kept playing. Camille Sterling, from her chair, raised her glass. In the small alcove behind the velvet curtain, on the same velvet bench where Adrian had once counted 4, 3, 2, 1, over a stranger he had decided to defend, Hazel set the young woman down and began softly to count. "Breathe," she said. "Slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. I will count. 4, 3, 2, 1.